They say weddings are about love, about commitment forever, the start of something beautiful. But as I stood there at the altar, staring at the man I was supposed to spend the rest of my life with, all I could think was, this isn't mine. The lace of my dress clung to my skin like it was warning me. My palms were damp, my smile, a carefully rehearsed mask. The church smelled of white lilies and polished wood, and behind me, dozens of eyes followed my every move. He looked at me, Michael, handsome, composed, kind, too kind. He mouthed, "You look beautiful," and I nodded like a puppet because what else was I supposed to do? Everyone was watching. Everyone had been watching for months. If anyone knows of a reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony, the priest's words rang in my ears like a challenge. I held my breath. What if I raised my hand? What if I said, "I sue"? I know a reason. My knees almost buckled. It wasn't that I didn't care for him, I did. But love? That deep, roaring, unstoppable love people wrote songs about, I hadn't seen in years, maybe never, and yet there I was, ready to bind myself to a life that felt anesthetized. From the pews, I caught my mother's tearful smile, my father's proud posture. My best friend Olivia sat quietly near the front, fingers nervously clutching something in her lap. And all I could think was, how the hell did I get here? It didn't start today. Maybe it started the night he proposed, the night the mirror shattered. It was supposed to be romantic. He had planned everything. The rooftop restaurant, the string quartet, the chilled champagne waiting by the window. Michael always knew how to stage a moment. That night, the city lights blinked like they were cheering us on. He got down on one knee just as dessert arrived, pulling out a ring that sparkled like it had been stolen from a dream. People around us clapped. A woman gasped, and I smiled. I said yes. Later that night, alone in my apartment, I leaned over the bathroom sink to wash my face. That's when it happened. The mirror slipped from the loose bracket on the wall and crashed into the sink, shattering into pieces. Glass everywhere. Tiny, sharp reflections of a woman I barely recognized. I remember just staring at the shards, not moving, not even breathing. Some part of me, some ancient irrational piece, believed it was a sign, like the universe had cleared its throat and whispered, "Are you sure?" But by morning, the glass was cleaned up, the frame discarded. My hand wore a ring now, and everyone said how lucky I was, how beautiful it all was. So I convinced myself it was nothing, just a broken mirror, bad timing, nothing more. Still, sometimes, late at night when I couldn't sleep, I'd picture that reflection, that splintered version of myself, and wonder if maybe that was the most honest I'd ever looked. After the proposal, everything moved fast. A flood of plans and Pinterest boards and cake tastings. I let myself be carried by the current, smiling, nodding, letting others decide for me, because it was easier than saying, "I don't know what I want." I remember the first fitting for my dress. My mother cried the moment I stepped out of the changing room. "You look like a bride," she whispered, and I wanted to ask, "But do I look like me?" I didn't. The rehearsal dinner was the loudest silence I've ever heard. Laughter echoed around me, glasses clinked. Stories were shared about how Michael and I were meant to be. I smiled through all of it. I had become skilled at playing the part. Just enough enthusiasm, just enough gratitude. But in the quiet moments, I felt it creeping in. Doubt. Not loud or dramatic, just persistent. Like a leaky faucet in the back of your mind, dripping constantly, reminding you something isn't quite right. There were moments when I almost said something. Once, in the car with Michael, after a long day of venue visits, I looked over at him, so patient, so certain, and opened my mouth, but he was humming along to the radio. tapping the steering wheel with his thumbs. Peaceful. So I closed it again. That's how most of those weeks passed. Tiny pauses, swallowed thoughts, the careful choreography of pretending everything was perfect, until the night before the wedding. That was the first time I truly broke character. I didn't sleep. The apartment was filled with unopened wedding gifts, white ribbons, and the faint scent of peonies from the bouquet Olivia had dropped off earlier. I sat in bed, legs crossed, wearing an oversized t-shirt I'd had since college. The ring was on the nightstand catching moonlight, mocking me. At some point, Olivia let herself in. She didn't say much, just curled up beside me, as if she knew that silence was safer than questions. She handed me a mug of tea I didn't drink. "You okay?" she asked after a while. I shrugged. What does that even mean? She didn't press, just picked at her nail polish and said, "You don't have to do anything you don't want to do." It sounded simple, almost insultingly simple, like she didn't understand the magnitude of what tomorrow was supposed to be. But then again, maybe she did. Maybe she understood better than anyone. "I don't want to hurt him," I murmured. "You already are," she said softly. "Just not the way you think." We stayed quiet after that. She fell asleep eventually, breathing slow and even. I lay there, wide-eyed, counting the cracks in the ceiling, replaying every moment where I could have said, "Stop," but didn't. When morning came, I showered, dressed, let people pin curls into my hair and paint my face into bridal perfection. I smiled for photos, I hugged relatives. I nodded at compliments like I meant them. But underneath the lace and mascara, I was unraveling. And as I stepped into the car that would take me to the church, I slipped the ring back on my finger and thought, one more act, just one more, then it's done. Except it wasn't, not even close. The organ played something regal and slow. My heels clicked down the aisle like a metronome counting down to disaster. I smiled, that same practiced smile that had carried me through so many moments I wasn't fully present for. Michael stood at the altar, exactly as I knew he would. Posture perfect, hair smooth, eyes soft. He looked at me like I was a missing piece, like I was his beginning. The chapel was filled with everything you'd expect. White roses, satin ribbons, faces turned toward me with eyes full of expectation, admiration, approval. It felt like I was walking into a trap I'd helped design. I took his hand. It was warm and steady. I remember thinking, just get through this. Pretend until it's over. The priest spoke. Words about unity, sacrifice, sacred vows. His voice echoed off the stone walls, but it sounded far away, like I was underwater. I nodded in the right places. I laughed quietly when Michael whispered that my veil was crooked. I tried not to look too long at Olivia, who sat in the front row clutching her purse tightly. Something peeked out between her fingers, a delicate silver chain with a small heart-shaped locket. I hadn't seen that necklace in years. It used to be mine. She must have found it tucked in a drawer at my place, brought it as a kind of reminder, a lifeline. Something inside me cracked, not loudly, just a hairline fracture. But it was enough. The priest's voice lifted. If anyone knows of a reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony, speak now or forever hold your peace. My heart slammed against my ribs. Speak now. No one moved. And yet, in that moment, I couldn't breathe. My mouth went dry. I turned to Michael, searching his face. Kind, steady, certain. I whispered, "I'm sorry." He blinked, confused. I stepped back, one step then two. Gasped. A murmur spread like static across the pews. I turned. My legs moved before my mind did. Down the aisle, past the stairs, past the confusion, out the door, into air that felt like the first breath after nearly drowning. I didn't look back. The doors slammed behind me with a thunder that echoed through my chest. The sound of my heels on the stone steps was drowned out by the roaring in my ears. Heartbeat, breath, panic. The wind hit my face like a slap. Cold, clean, real. The car was parked just beyond the courtyard. I didn't even know who drove me there. I just opened the door and climbed in, yanking the train of my dress behind me. The driver glanced at me in the rearview mirror, puzzled. "Go," I said, breathless. "Anywhere. Just go." And he did. I leaned back, feeling the satin bodice pressing into my ribs. My chest heaved like I'd been running for miles, not meters. My fingers trembled in my lap. From the window, the chapel shrank behind us. My whole life, wrapped in white and tradition and careful planning, growing smaller by the second. No one called, no one texted. Maybe they didn't know what to say. Maybe they were still trying to understand what had just happened. I didn't know what I was feeling, not yet. Relief and guilt were fighting for space inside me. I had hurt someone I cared about. I had disappointed everyone. And still, beneath the chaos, there was a quiet clarity, not joy, not yet, but the beginning of something that might one day resemble it. The car stopped at a gas station off the highway. I stepped out, still in full bridal armor, lace, silk, pins clinging to curls that had started to loosen. The smell of gasoline and warm asphalt hit me like a reality check. A kid stared at me from the passenger seat of a minivan. His mouth opened slightly like he couldn't decide if I was a runaway princess or a ghost. I smiled at him, just a little. Inside the convenience store, I bought a bottle of water and a bag of gummy bears. The cashier didn't say a word. Maybe she didn't want to ask. Or maybe she just didn't care. I kind of loved her for that. I sat on the curb outside and took a sip. And I breathed, really breathed. Not the shallow, performative inhales I'd been doing for months, but something deeper. My shoulders sank, my jaw unclenched. My eyes stung a little, but I didn't cry. Somewhere in the distance, a freight train rumbled past. Heavy, loud, moving with purpose. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't have a plan. I didn't even have a change of clothes, but for the first time in a long time, I wasn't pretending. I reached into my purse, pulled out my phone, and typed one sentence into a blank note. I left because I couldn't keep lying to myself. Then I turned off the screen, leaned back, and let the sun hit my face, and just sat there, breathing.